what makes you think that this ceasefire will last? What do you think Pakistan did to convince them, maybe, or what leverage do you think Pakistan had?
Pakistan did not mediate much, but Pakistan became a conduit. They have a very special equation with Donald Trump in particular. In general with America, because they were members of CENTO, Central Treaty Organization, etc., during the Cold War. But in recent times, they developed a personal affinity with Donald Trump. They say all kinds of private dealings, business relationships, other things are talked about. Each must now be willing to make compromises. Without compromises, both will have a difficult time. Every country, including India, wants the Strait of Hormuz to be open sea, international sea, with free transport available at all times. Because that is the international law business. This war has actually ultimately shifted our focus, the global community's focus, on renewable sources of energy. US probably, under Donald Trump, lost public confidence significantly because they have actively undermined global institutions.
The ceasefire that the US and Iran agreed upon came as a sigh of relief. It is said that the Strait of Hormuz also will be opened soon. Though the ceasefire is temporary, will it actually last? What does this ceasefire mean to India? And will peace prevail? Let us discuss this with Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan. Hello, sir.
Hello, Saranya.
Sir, now that the ceasefire between US and Iran has been agreed upon, do you think we can finally take a sigh of relief?
Definitely. At least for now, I think the whole world, every sane human being will heave a sigh of relief and should welcome it. Because this war is hurting everybody. There are so many local wars after the Second World War. And there was far more bloodshed, far more loss of life, and even destruction of property than in Iran now in many of those wars. But that did not affect the rest of the world so profoundly. Now, this affected all of us. Potentially, if this continued and if both the sides carried out their threats, for instance, President Trump said in a very intemperate manner that he will bomb Iran into Stone Age. He said the whole civilization will collapse. So very extreme threats, and they are both immoral and illegal and very dangerous. And Iran said, if you attack us like that, we will destroy all the oil fields in the Gulf countries, all the drinking water supply in Gulf countries. So these are extreme situations. If that happened, not only would the region have been decimated, but the world economy would have been decimated for a long time. So this war had a profound impact, or potentially had a profound impact on the rest of the world's economy. Therefore, we all should welcome it and heave a sigh of relief. And let's hope that wisdom will prevail. A bit of patience, a bit of diplomacy means that they can reconcile conflicting interests and come out with it with a face-saving formula, protecting the core interests of each party.
Sir, according to Mr. Donald Trump, he gave a huge credit to Pakistan with regards to the ceasefire being agreed upon. What do you think Pakistan did to convince them, maybe, or what leverage do you think Pakistan had?
Pakistan did not mediate much, but Pakistan became a conduit. It became an intermediary for the dialogue because there was no face-to-face dialogue also. So communication, which is an important thing as an honest broker. Because Pakistan had certain advantages. It's an Islamic country. Iran is an Islamic country. It's a neighbor of Iran. Hundreds of kilometers of border is there between Pakistan and Iran. And they both don't have... Iran unwisely involved all the Arab countries in this war. They bombed other Arab countries, but Pakistan they did not touch. Second, Pakistan has the second largest Shia population in the world after Iran. Iran is a Shia country. After Iran, Pakistan, India, and Iraq have the largest Shia population in the world. So Pakistan has the Shia population. Third, they have a very special equation with Donald Trump in particular. In general with America, because they were members of CENTO, Central Treaty Organization, etc., during the Cold War. But in recent times, they developed a personal affinity with Donald Trump. They say all kinds of private dealings, business relationships, and other things are talked about. Whatever be the reason, it looks like Mr. Donald Trump trusts them. And therefore, Pakistan could play that role. And Pakistan is also the only Islamic country with a nuclear bomb. So they have a certain position in the Islamic society. And therefore, the Gulf countries, the Arab countries, the Sunni countries, they also were comfortable in dealing with them. And Pakistan also, China was, I think, blessed in the effort. So Pakistan had those opportunities. And to be fair, I think Pakistan played a constructive role. This is the kind of thing the other day also when we were discussing, we talked about it. The stakes are so great and the interests of all the global community are so common. We should forget all political differences, religious differences on this issue. We should work for peace and restoration of supply chains. And to that extent, whoever worked for that, whether it's China or Pakistan or Turkey or Saudi Arabia or some other country, I think we should welcome it. And India, I think, has welcomed it. India has always supported a dialogue and opening up the Strait of Hormuz. And those immediate goals are fulfilled, and therefore we should welcome it.
So, sir, as we discussed, the ceasefire was negotiated by a third party country, which is Pakistan. So, this reaffirms your point that there was a global consensus for the war to stop. However, it still continued for a really long time. So, what makes you think that this ceasefire will last?
I think a war is disadvantageous to both parties, much more disadvantageous than peace. America hoped that by decapitating the top leadership at one fell swoop, there will be a regime change which will not only bring peace and freedom and democracy to the people of Iran, but that will change the character of the regime and therefore the nuclearization of Iran that was attempted, the terrorist support through proxy groups that was going on, and the aggressive pursuit of destruction of America and Israel will be ended. America failed in that. On top of it, Iran showed the capacity to stop all traffic in the Hormuz Strait and therefore held the whole world to ransom. And America could not remove that, no matter how much they tried. They tried to offer alternative insurance, they tried to say we'll give escort naval ships, but none of it worked because the risks are too great for the shipping. So America realized its limitations. And America achieved its objective of showing Iran that if it's necessary, they can bomb them to smithereens. Now, you take from the Iranian side, while Iran held its own, their non-destruction is regarded as a victory. It's hardly a victory, it's a very low bar. Basically, regime survived. It was an existential struggle for them. And yet, sanctions continue. The country is in a perilous state. In much of the infrastructure, the armed forces were destroyed in the country. And people are suffering a great deal. And therefore, Iran also realizes that there's a point beyond which they can't do anything either. So both now realize their limitations. It's like, there are two snakes. This snake is holding the tail of the other snake. That snake is holding the tail of this snake. So each must now be willing to make compromises. Without compromises, both will have a difficult time. So I think it is that recognition that continued conflict will not serve anybody's interests. It's that recognition that allowed the ceasefire to happen. I think it's the same recognition, same interests will probably prolong peace for a durable period, provided both sides exhibit a bit of wisdom, a bit of patience, and a bit of diplomacy. Because unfortunately, they behaved like our political parties in India. Basti mein sawal kind of an attitude, each indulging in bluff and bluster, harsh language, very crude language. I think that must give way to more peaceful reconciliation and a more mature and sober understanding of their own interests and the risks involved in the conflict continuing.
So, sir, along with the ceasefire, they are saying the Strait of Hormuz also will be opened. Now, if the Strait of Hormuz will be opened, Iran says it wants to control it. However, Donald Trump is against it since the start. Do you think if if Iran controls it, let's say, do you think if Iran controls it, how would it impact India?
Every country, including India, wants the Strait of Hormuz to be open sea, international sea, with free transport available at all times. Because that is the international law of the seas. And that is the pattern for the past several centuries. Never before did a country claim that the international waters are theirs, and they never before claimed control over the shipping routes. See, you take Panama Canal. The country of Panama controls it. It is a canal dug between the Atlantic Ocean on the east and Pacific Ocean on the west. You take Suez Canal. It is the canal that is linking Indian Ocean and Arabian Sea, basically through Red Sea on the east or east and south to the north, Mediterranean Sea, and then to Atlantic. Now, these are within the national boundaries. Panama Canal in the country of Panama, Suez Canal in the country of Egypt. They were built with the wealth of the local society. Colonial times or somebody, it doesn't matter which time, who built it. But they are built by the wealth of the local society. They are their property. Therefore, they allow free transport, but they collect a tariff. It is like, you're collecting a rent, like toll on the road. But high seas, international shipping routes, these are global commodities. Nobody can collect a toll there. If you allow that precedent now to be established, there are many other such chokeholds in the world economy, in the seas. You take, for instance, the west coast of the Arabian Peninsula, you have the Bab el-Mandas, another strait. On the one side you have Yemen, on the other side you have Somalia, an African continent. Now already there is piracy there. Occasionally Houthis create a problem, Somalis create a problem. Supposing you actually give them rights to collect tariffs and control that, the whole global shipping route will be under control of some private parties or small rogue players or nation states. You cannot allow that. Similarly, you have the Malacca Strait. All the supplies to China, Japan, Southeast Asia, they have to go through that Malacca Strait, very close to our Andaman Islands, and via the Malaysian and Indonesian territories. Similarly, you have in the Black Sea, Turkey in parts, Russia in parts, they can control, they can create a problem. Strait of Gibraltar, the entry point into Mediterranean Sea from the Atlantic Ocean, Spain on the one hand, and the North African countries on the other hand, they can claim sovereignty. So this is a very dangerous precedent. Therefore, this cannot be allowed. I think global community will fight tooth and nail to prevent that. But if, in order to maintain durable peace, it becomes necessary to give some kind of dual control to both Iran and Oman, the kind of tariffs that are talked about are unsustainable. They're talking about $2 million per a ship of a 40,000, 50,000 tonnage. It's ridiculous. The cost will go up too much. It's not acceptable. If you take Suez Canal, the tariff there for a ship of, let's say, 40,000, 50,000 tons is roughly about $100,000, $105,000 after some discounts. Something like that is perhaps doable in case control has to be inevitably given to Iran and Oman for global, because of other global considerations. So it's going to be an extremely difficult issue, but the non-negotiable issue is they must be kept open for all times. A difficult but perhaps negotiable issue is, will the littoral countries have some say in the management of that and control of that, provide some services and collect a nominal tariff? Let's see how the negotiations proceed.
Yes, sir. So in situation like this, where there is a very small window of certainty, do you think that India should focus more on accelerating its growth, or do you think India should focus more on protecting itself?
In a very unexpected way, this war has actually ultimately shifted our focus, the global community's focus, on renewable sources of energy. For a long time, there's been a debate, and massive technologies have come, very highly competitive, economically viable technologies for solar power, for electric cars, for storage batteries, and so on and so forth. Already efforts are underway. But this war probably wakes up the whole global community, including Indian community, to try and accelerate this transition from the fossil fuel energy to non-fossil fuel energy, and in particular renewable energy, the green transition. Because technology is available, it's economically viable, already basic infrastructure is in place, we must now accelerate that. So in the long term, there are two things we must attempt. One is greening, solar power, batteries, electric cars, public transport, and a whole lot of attendant things. The second is we also will probably require some kind of fungible fuel like oil or gas. So even in the worst case scenario, we must be able to withstand a disruption of supplies, and therefore gasification of coal, India did not move in that direction adequately. China has made rapid strides in the past decade or more, maybe 15, 20 years, because South Africa is the leader in that technology. China borrowed the technology, now exceeded South Africa, is now the leader in the technology, and created a lot of capacity to convert coal into gas, etc. India also has a lot of coal, though our coal is of inferior quality, it is high ash content coal, but does not matter, we are experienced in dealing with that. So we must go for gasification also. In the short term, as you said, we must go for greater storage. India has some storage, not a great amount of storage, and therefore for a month or two we could withstand. China could probably withstand 3-4 months. It costs money, both to build storage capacity and to buy oil and simply keep it idle, stored there for a contingency. But then if that's what is necessary to protect the future, that's what's necessary, we must do it. So in every which way, this must now make us much more cautious about the supply chains and prepare for any contingency in future. Similarly, Gulf countries, for instance, they are going to find alternative supply routes. Even now, because there's a supply route through a pipeline created in 1980s by Saudi Arabia between the east coast to west coast Yanbu, 7 million barrels a day they are pumping every day. They are transporting to the west coast. Now I'm sure they will aggressively go for another pipeline or two from east coast to west coast and connect it to other Gulf countries, and therefore go to either directly east coast, bypassing Strait of Hormuz if necessary, and also maybe a pipeline towards down south and southeast via Oman, maybe without having to go through the Strait of Hormuz. They can directly send supplies to Asia. So a lot of efforts will go into these things, finding alternative supply chains and alternative supply routes. And India too must make all those efforts.
Sir, if negotiations like this last, then can we restore or go back to the trust we had? Or let's say, can we go back to the trust that the globe showed towards US?
US probably under Donald Trump lost public confidence significantly because they have actively undermined global institutions, a rule-based global order, and the conduct and acting unilaterally without trying to build a consensus. All these certainly erode the trust. But we have to do business with America. There's no choice. Because America is the preeminent global power economically and militarily, and also politically with the networking, with the connections and all that. Its influence probably will come down because trust has come down, but its power will remain to be the most important source of power in the world for several decades more. Though other countries are rising, they cannot easily replace America in a variety of ways in terms of its military power, economic might, technological power, financial power, currency flows. So it's an unfortunate thing that the world's preeminent power has somehow lost the public trust, global public confidence, and seem to be acting on occasion rashly and sometimes irrationally. But as far as the Gulf peace is concerned, I am somewhat optimistic, not because all these players are very wise and wonderful, but because they probably learned their lesson. Probably it will be more costly to have a war than to have peace. And I think that requirements can be actually fulfilled if they don't go for maximalist demands. Now, what does the world want? The global community wants uninterrupted supply chains, continued economic growth and prosperity to take care of their people's lives, and global peace in order to have economic growth. What do the Gulf countries want? They want the supply route to be open because without that, they're economically dead. Their main source of wealth is fossil fuels, and if they cannot be transported, then those countries' economies perish. And they want security because even though they were not actively involved in the war, Iran attacked them, they were under threat. And third, in the past 10-15 years, the Gulf countries, which were earlier somewhat backward looking, somewhat traditional, Now they have become progressive, modernist, encouraging investment, creating a climate of safety and economic growth and technology. So they want to pursue that path of modernization. What do America and Israel want? They want Iran to stop nuclearization. The nuclear bomb should never produce. It must end the support to the proxy terrorist groups like Hezbollah and Hamas and others, creating problems for America, for Israel, and for the rest of the communities. What do Iranians want? They want some degree of assurance that there will not be any further war attacking them because ultimately they are weak. In the face of American and Israeli attacks, Iran cannot defend itself. It can barely survive. And two, the sanctions must end so that they can pursue economic prosperity for their people. The country's problems can go. So these are the reasonable demands on all sides. They are genuine, legitimate requirements. They are all compatible. We can find a formula of peace. But if each country looks for a maximalist demand, and that will be an impossibility. The idea of a dialogue is that you give up a little bit, I give up a little bit, you come to the middle. There are some issues on which you cannot compromise. Iran probably will have to aggressively ask for sanctions to be lifted. America and Israel will certainly ask for nuclear program to end. The world and the Gulf countries will certainly ask for the Gulf of Hormuz to be open and available for transport without interruption. But these are absolutely minimal demands without which they cannot live. But some other demands, they are more bargaining chips. So all sides, they must exhibit some degree of wisdom and restraint. Because there are collective common interests, maintaining peace rather than to go back to war, I think there is a fair chance that peace will prevail for a reasonable time, provided these two main players, Iran on the one hand and America on the other hand, they exhibit some degree of wisdom and restraint and self-interest.
Thank you, sir.